All right, here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Podcast Engineering Show. My name's Chris Curran. This is going to be a session that's different than all the others. So this is not a standard type of session. So if you want to hear the real Podcast Engineering Show sessions, listen to a previous session. This is just going to be me hanging out, chatting about all kinds of stuff, including my end-of-year purchases, my plans for my new iMacPro, which I just ordered. I won't have that for several weeks, I guess. I'm going to reflect on 2017, talk about plans for 2018, and talk about my little talk that I'm giving at PodFest in about a month. Hope you're going to PodFest. And then I'm going to tell you about how I processed a bunch of episodes of Hardcore History for my road trip. And I'm going to mention Podcasters Society. And also, I'm going to tell you about what happened with working with a radio producer to create the Pause Your Life podcast. And everything was produced in mono. And anyway, there's a really good audio lesson there. So I'm going to cover a lot of different things. I am sick, so I might have to stop to cough, but of course you probably won't hear that because I'll edit it out. But one thing about being sick, and I forgot to put on my headphones too. Not that you really need them when you're recording by yourself, but it always helps to wear headphones and hear yourself a little bit in the headphones so you can tell when you're on mic and when you're drifting off mic. But I've been sick, which is very rare for me. I rarely never get sick, and one thing that happened this time is that, I don't get sick that much. So when I was trying to, produce some audio and mix down some episodes for clients and stuff, and it's like my hearing is different. It's hard to explain, but it just sounds weird. But, obviously I can compensate for that. I can, listen on the same speakers, which I'm going to be mixing the episode. I can listen to a bunch of music first, right? So you kind of acclimate your ears to what it sounds like, what regular music sounds like, and then when you start to mix the podcast episode, you'll be able to make it sound good. And it didn't mess with my hearing that much, but it's just weird, right? And I don't know, as an audio engineer, when you're not sure what you're hearing, that's like the worst thing in the world. So. And of course, that's a technique to always know what you're hearing, is to, listen to a piece of music that you know really well, something you've been listening to for 20 years, and you know how it sounds, and that's how you can play that through any speakers, and then you'll kind of know what those speakers sound like. Then you'll be able to mix on them. But I just made a bunch of end-of-year purchases, and I'm sure many of you do this as well, especially if podcasting is your full-time business, then at the end of the year, sometimes if you've had a decent year and you need to buy some new gear anyway, it's always good to buy the gear right at the end of the year, because then you can write it off on your taxes, right? And then you pay less taxes. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing, because whichever year you buy it, it's going to be tax deductible, but sometimes if you've had a really good year, you can start to look around and think at the end of the year, like, ooh, what should I buy? Because you just want to buy some stuff to bring down your tax burden. The danger there is you can't buy stuff that you don't need, right? If you need it, that's fine. But obviously you can't just go spend a bunch of money. So this year, or the end of last year, 3 days ago, I purchased a few things. The big one was the iMacPro, which has only been available for a couple weeks, and I'm going to talk a lot about my plans for the iMacPro, like what I'm going to do with it, how I'm going to use it. I also bought a MixPre6. I really did. It's something that I know I'm going to use. I wanted it, and when I go on location, it's just the perfect thing to record on location. And I know of at least one major client I have that I'm going to go on location for in 2018. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to get it. And plus I could, even use it as an audio interface for my iMac Pro if I need to. So I also bought a pistol grip for my shotgun mic, which is an Audio-Technica 8035. So I bought a pistol grip because one thing I know from using that shotgun, if you hold it in your hand and you kind of, move it around a little, like it creates that handling noise, that really kind of low frequency little handling noise that comes through. And that's so annoying. I mean, I've had to go through recordings to remove as much of that as I can, and oh my god, that is terrible, because it's weird noise. It's not like a pop, like a P. It's not just like background noise. It's like just weird, and sometimes it happens between when people are speaking. Like, I think that's when it happened to me, like when I was holding one mic and I would point the mic at myself and I would ask a question, and then I would move the mic and point it at the interviewee, and then they would answer the question. But in the process of moving it from me to the other person, there was a lot of handling noise in between us speaking. So some of that obviously you can take out or just replace it with background noise. But sometimes the person would start answering before my mic was already right near their mouth. So like the handling noise would happen at the same time as they started to answer. So anyway, the pistol grip is just like, it's like you're holding a pistol. So you can hold the mic, and the mic is attached to the pistol grip, and it's shock mounted and all that. And Brian Orr uses one of those too. And he's the one who gave me the idea to get one. So I might use the pistol grip in Podfest, which is going to be in about a month from now, because I might want to bring the mic and a recorder. I might just bring the Zoom H6 if I'm just going to be walking around recording people. But I did want the pistol grip for my shotgun mic, so now it'll be cool. Maybe I'll be walking around Podfest with this pistol grip with a shotgun mic on it and just talking to people. Anyway, one other thing purchase. It wasn't my purchase, but it was Ralph M. Rivera's purchase. He actually bought the Bose QuietComfort 35 Mark II headphones. So these are Bose noise-canceling headphones, and they are high-end. They cost about $350, but they are Bluetooth. He said the Bluetooth works really well. Sometimes Bluetooth headphones, it degrades the audio quality a lot. He said that these sound completely fine, and he's never heard any crackling or anything, any break in the Bluetooth connection. He's never heard anything. He just hears the audio perfectly. He says they're very comfortable and very light, which is cool. And obviously they have noise canceling, so it's more of a consumer product than a pro audio product, because these Bose noise canceling headphones is what people bring on airplanes and stuff like that. Someday I'm going to get some because I think it's a really cool idea, but I don't know. I don't know how often I would use them. So, but Ralph does use them a lot, and he says you can even use them to talk on the phone too. So it'll connect to your phone, and he can talk on the phone. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that because he really loved them. All right, so my plans for the iMac Pro. So right now I have a round table, and I have all my computers and recording equipment set up on this one table, and this is where I do all my recording, whether I'm speaking myself or whether I'm having guests through the internet, or whether I'm connecting with a client and they have 2 or 3 guests and all that stuff, right? I do all my recording at the round table, and you've probably seen a picture of it, or else you can go to my Twitter handle, Fractal Sound, @FractalSound, and the header image for that Twitter is the picture of the round table with all my stuff on it. And then, so in addition to the round table, I have a little desk in a separate place, which is right nearby. It's about 10 feet away. That's where I do my mixing. So that's where I have my main computer set up. That's where I have my studio monitors set up, my speakers. And that's where I can sit comfortably in a nice, comfortable office chair and actually have good speakers pointed right at me, and I can mix. And that's where I do my mixing. So part of the plan for getting this iMac Pro is I want to set everything up on my round table. So I want to have my main computer, which is going to be the iMac Pro, on the round table, and I want to have all my recording gear on the round table, and I want to have my speakers. I want to have just one spot to do everything now instead of having two different places to sit. So I'm going to have to move my boom arm, and I'm going to have to rearrange this round table, but it'll be cool because everything will be in one spot, meaning I can record, I can mix, I can talk and record my voice on a microphone, everything from one spot. And so the benefit of that also, and something else I want to do, is live streaming with video. So I want to do some live streaming, and I have a few different projects I'm going to do this with. It's not necessarily podcast engineering school stuff, although that would be kind of cool. But I just like the idea of live streaming with video, and obviously having really good sound as well. And so, by the way, I'm going to finish my list, but by the way, I mentioned to some people that I was thinking about getting the iMac Pro, and many people said to me, oh, that's overkill. That's way too powerful a computer. You don't need that power just to do audio. If you're editing video, if you're editing a bunch of 8K video and huge files and all that stuff, then maybe. But just for audio only, you don't need an iMac Pro. And I actually agree with them. And so the reason I got the iMac Pro, or I ordered it, is because I want to do a lot more with it. Audio is one thing for sure, but I do want to do live streaming with video. I want to have a green screen behind me, so I have to figure out how to do that, how to put up either a green backdrop or something, and figure out how to do that. I've never done green screen, so I want to do that. Shouldn't be too hard. Also, I want to do webinars and screen capturing. So right now, when we have a semester of the podcast engineering school, it is delivered through webinars. There's 7 or 8 live webinars of 2 hours each with me. And so it's me with a good mic on video, lecturing and teaching and showing slides and all that. And I also record what I'm doing too. I screen capture everything because then I can post that later for the students. So if there's a student that missed one of the classes, they can go back and watch it. And even students who attend the classes, they usually go back and watch it again because there's so much material in each class. But to do that, to do a live webinar, stream it out, have 10 or 20 participants, also be screen capturing everything, that's a lot of programs open. That's a lot of things that this computer is doing. So anyway, there's many reasons why I wanted a really powerful computer. The other reason is because, again, if this is going to last 4 or 5 years, my thinking is that I should get the most powerful one right now, and so that in 4 years, it'll still be good. Whereas if I got a cheap model right now, then in 4 years, it's going to be not even worth using, right? So anyway, that was my rationale. So when I get my new iMac Pro, that's going to be my new production machine. Then I'm going to move over all the plugins, right? I've never done that before, but I'm sure it can't be that difficult. I'll still use Reaper, at least to start with. And so I'll move over all my plugins onto the new computer. Most plugins, you're only allowed to sort of register them on one computer. So I won't be able to use those plugins on my old production computer, which is fine because my old production computer is just going to turn into a regular computer, basically. Another way plugins work is with a dongle. It's like a little USB dongle that you have to plug in, and that's sort of like your registration is attached to that dongle, that USB dongle. So literally you could walk up to any computer and plug in your dongle and then, open up an audio program and all your plugins will be there, kind of a thing. So, but that's not how a lot of the VST plugins work, especially the Waves plugins that I mainly use. So another thing I might eventually want for my new setup is the Sennheiser MKH416 microphone. It's a shotgun mic, very famous for voiceovers. We've mentioned it on the show many times. It's a $1,000 microphone, but it's really awesome. And the other thing is it's a shotgun, so it can be a little further away. So I'm kind of thinking, like, if I'm going to be doing video, I could have the shotgun mic, maybe even have it like off camera, just pointing right at me, and then it'll pick me up and it'll sound really good. So anyway, but it's the MKH416. It's $1,000, and I'm still kicking myself because it's about a little more than a year ago on Black Friday. I think they had it on sale for $600, and I almost bought it, and I should have, but I didn't, and so now I'm kicking myself. But it's not a big deal. Really, what I could do is, instead of buying that shotgun mic, I could use the shotgun mic I already have, the AT8035. The only thing is that's a good mic, but I'm sure it's definitely not as good as the MKH416. Okay, so moving through the list of things to discuss on this session. Reflections from 2017. So I had the first 2 semesters of podcast engineering school, and they went really, really well. Each semester had about 10 students, and every student really loved it. Like, podcast engineering school is not cheap, but every single student loved it and thought it was worth way more than they paid. And I'm proud of that, because it makes you feel good when you deliver value above and beyond what people expect. And that was my plan for podcast engineering school, and that's what's been happening, and I'm really happy about that. And I want to keep that going into the future. Also in 2017, I attended Podcast Movement, and I had the microphone test drive booth. Remember that? And that was awesome. But the whole Podcast Movement conference was like a complete blur to me, like, because I was working the whole time, and it was just a blur. So anyway, that was it was good, but it's a different experience. And also, I had some clients come and go. I got some new clients in 2017, and some of them, moved on, that happens every year. Okay, my plans for 2018. Well, first of all, Podcast Movement is going to be in Philadelphia, and I'm not sure if I'll be doing the microphone test drive booth again, because number one, I'm not sure I want to, but number two, well, there were some things that happened last year, which anyway, I'm not gonna get into that, but yeah, there's a couple weird things that happened, and I don't know, maybe they don't want me back, but anyway, nothing majorly bad, like nothing terrible, just some weirdness. But anyway, I'll definitely be at Podcast Movement in 2018, and also I'll be at PodFest, which is just a month away. I think it's February 8th through the 10th in Orlando. I'll be there. And guess what? For this one, I'm not having a booth. I'm not doing anything except for hanging out. I'm going to be hanging out, having fun. If you're there, let's hang out, have some fun. And it'll be good. I'm also giving a little talk, which I'm going to give you the details on that talk in a second. But also for 2018, I'm going to be offering 4 semesters of podcast engineering school. So the first one starts in a few days, January 9th. If you're hearing this, well, this is going to be published, I think, on January 4th. So I guess technically there's still time to sign up, but I assume if you haven't signed up already, then you probably want to wait till the next one or something. So January 9th we start, and then the next semester is going to start on April 3rd. And then the one after that is going to start on June 26th. And the one after that is going to start September 18th. And each semester is 8 weeks. There's 7 or 8 classes. And anyway, you can go to the website, podcastengineerschool.com, and you could see what's involved with the program. You've heard me talk about it before. But yeah, so we're going to do 4 semesters this year. I'm looking forward to that. Again, keep the student count pretty low so I can, and I obviously work with each student hand in hand. Like, Very close. It's literally like a one-on-one mentorship, pretty much. And the 7 classes are just, part of the way that all the information is delivered. But really, it's like a mentorship, which is awesome. Also, in 2018, I hope to grow my new initiative, which is called PodFudge. I partnered with Kevin Strasser, and him and I are creating PodFudge, which is a new kind of podcasting agency, audio production, and audience growth services. So PodFudge is cool. We just started it, and we haven't really put the pedal to the metal yet with our marketing and sales. But anyway, that's something I'm going to be working on in 2018. By the way, you can comment or send me a note and let me know what your plans are for 2018, for your audio, for your business, anything. So, all right. So my talk at PodFest in about a month, it's part of the Pecha Kucha, which is, I don't know if you've heard of this. It's like 20, you get to show 20 slides, and they're each on the screen for 20 seconds. And they advance automatically. So it's 20 slides, 20 seconds each, and so that's 400 seconds, which is 6 minutes and 40 seconds. And that's it. You're done. So it starts, 20 slides, they play automatically, 20 seconds each, and then you're done. So it's kind of a cool little short format to sort of force you to get to the point, make it nice and tight, and that kind of thing. So I'm psyched about that. The title of my talk is going to be something like EQ, What You Need to Know About Equalization. And basically I'm going to show slides, and I'm going to play sounds. And to sort of help the participants understand what frequencies are, what sound is. And so they'll learn the fundamentals of why to use EQ, how to use EQ, and of course I'm going to go over it pretty quick. These are things that I cover in podcast engineering school. We spend a lot of time on, but this is going to be a quick version. And I'm going to play examples of good and bad audio. My plan is to play some audio with like one audio clip that has way too much bass in it, and then play another clip that has way too much high end and harshness in it, and then play something with really harsh S's where the sibilance is crazy. And then I'm actually going to record some road noise. So I'm going to take a ride in my car and record like the road noise, and then play some voices on top of that, and sort of show how if you compress a voice nicely, it'll sit above the road noise, and the listener will still be able to hear it. But if you don't compress it, sometimes when the speaker talks really low, it goes below the road noise level, and then you can't hear it. So anyway, I'm going to hopefully show a voice with like too much reverb on it, so it sounds like someone's in a hallway or something. And also something with huge dynamic range, and then show it compressed. So like my plan is to just show the basic things that sound good and sound horrible. Because I think when people hear that and I explain it quickly, it's going to be very quick and simple. But when they hear it and I explain what it is, I think people will get it. And then that's really helpful, because hopefully people who want to reflect on what things sound like, or they care about what things sound like, they'll be able to hear my presentation and actually, hopefully some light bulbs go off, right? All right, so here's the thing. I just took a road trip with my wife up to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is right near Yellowstone National Park, and it's also right near Grand Teton National Park. And I was going to bring a bunch of episodes of Hardcore History, which is a podcast that I really like. A lot of people really like it. And I actually bought all the back episodes of that show. I think it's like $50 and you get like the first 50 episodes or something. So it's not much at all, but it's a good way to contribute and support Dan Carlin, who's the host, and his team, because it's a great show. Anyway, when I drive in my Toyota Prius, the Prius is light and a lot of noise comes in from the road. So when you start doing, 80 miles an hour or 85 miles an hour, the road noise is substantial. And when I try to listen to podcasts, a lot of these podcasts, they're not compressed enough. They're not mastered properly. They're not limited enough. And I have to turn up the volume. And then, for instance, Dan Carlin, when he speaks really loud, it's really loud. And then when he speaks really soft, I literally can't hear it. So my idea was I'm going to process a bunch of his episodes, compress it and limit it and all that, and then, burn it onto a CD and bring it in the car. So that's what I did. And my plan was to batch process it, right? You can batch process things with a lot of different programs. So instead of, opening one file and processing one file and then saving that file and then closing it and then opening up the second file and repeating the same process like 10 times, you can use batch processing, which is in RX6, they have it. In SoundForge Pro, they have it. And you can just you tell them what 10 files they are and you tell them what you want done with it. And you just hit, you click go and it'll literally, all by itself, it'll open up the first file, process it, save it. Then it'll open up the second file. So batch processing is really awesome if you ever need to process a lot of different files in the same way. So I did that. One thing about Hardcore History is it's in stereo, right? So there's left and right channels. And I was thinking, well, if I'm going to do a lot of processing on this, and I'm going to want to, because of space constraints on a CD and stuff like that, I wanted to, save it in mono, basically. So because, I'm in a car and it's a podcast, so I thought I'll process it and save it as mono, and it'll be half the file size. So what I did was I actually took the stereo file, which was an MP3, right? I didn't have the original uncompressed files. I only had the MP3. So first I took the MP3 and then I saved it as a mono MP3, which was a mistake, actually. Because what you're doing is you're taking an MP3 and you're re-encoding it again as an MP3. And when you re-encode MP3s to another MP3, wow, the quality goes way down. So I made it a mono MP3, and then I brought it into RX6, and I processed it with a leveler and loudness and stuff like that. And then, of course, at the end of that process in RX6, I saved it as another MP3. So when I finally got it into the car and we started on our road trip and I turned it on, it played and it sounded okay, and it was leveled quite a bit, which was, it was leveled pretty well, meaning that the low parts were not super low. But I could really hear the fact that it was re-encoded as an MP3 3 times. It just sounded like kind of like it was underwater a little bit. It wasn't like the worst encoding I've ever heard, but it was really a little wishy-washy and just, wow, it just bad. And so what I did wrong, and thing is, I knew how to do it right, but I was just trying to batch process it and get it done, and so we could get in the car and leave, right? But the right way to do it would have been to take the MP3 file of let's say, an episode of Hardcore History, bring it into RX6, do the leveling and the loudness first, then save it as, or export it as a WAV file, right, uncompressed, in stereo, because one thing about RX6 is you can't output it in mono. You can't output a stereo file in mono, which is kind of annoying. I mean, I would love that feature. Sometimes you want to take a stereo file and output it as a mono file, and you can't do that in RX6, I don't think. I mean, unless I'm really missing something. And you can't do that in Ozone either, which is very annoying. Actually, in Ozone, you can output it in mono, but it outputs it as 2 channels, left and right, in mono, which is ridiculous. I mean, why would you? I don't know. I mean, look, I know these programs are mostly focused on music, and that's why everything should be, left and right channels. I get that, but still, it's not that hard to add a little checkbox that says please output it in mono. I don't know. Anyway, I have to take the Hardcore History episode, do the processing in RX6, output it as a WAV file so I don't lose any quality, then bring that into SoundForge Pro. And in SoundForge Pro, I am allowed to save a stereo file as a mono file. So then I could open in SoundForge Pro, open the stereo wave file, and then save it as a mono MP3, and it'll just re-encode the MP3 once. And that would be the way to do it to make sure it sounds the best. So if I do it again, I'll do it that way. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting process that you might want to hear about. That's one thing I like about SoundForge Pro as well. It's very much like it's just very handy for stereo and mono editing and saving and re-encoding, or like saving as different files. Like you could save it as anything, mono, stereo, any bit depth, any file type. It's just very, very handy for stuff like that. And it's just another reason why I like SoundForge Pro as my stereo editor. And it's also just a tool that I like having handy, because sometimes you need to just save something in a different format, and SoundForge Pro is just the easiest way to do it. Okay, I did want to mention Podcasters Society. It's a community of podcasters that is just awesome. Like it's a paid community, and it's not cheap. So you have to pay to be involved in Podcasters Society. But I am one of the expert contributors to that community. So you can actually join through a link on podcastengineeringschool.com, and you can actually save some money. But just in general, as a community, it covers every aspect of production, and marketing and everything about podcasting. It's really made for podcasters, not exactly podcast producers. So there is like a production, channel in the Slack group, but there's also marketing and everything else. So, but it's just very comprehensive. The members there are awesome, and it's like you probably heard me say it before, but it's almost like a Facebook group, but like a million times better, because everyone there is serious and everyone there helps each other. So Podcasters Society, it's a great community. A lot of times as podcasters and producers, like you might want to ask a question on Facebook and you might get some answers, but there's other times like you wish you almost had like a little mastermind group. You could ask like really talented and good people for their advice, and that's exactly what Podcasters Society is. There's forums and there's a Slack group, and I also wanted to mention Podcast Engineering School. We also have a Slack group, and current students are in the Slack group, and also all the alumni, and that's even more focused and serious and awesome. So that's like one of the best things about Podcast Engineering School, is being part of that Slack group where all different aspects of production, students and alumni can ask any question and get answers from me and other students, other members, or not members, students and alumni. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that the Slack group of Podcast Engineering School is awesome. All right, and the last thing I want to mention is a podcast that I had produced recently. So my wife and I have a group, an organization that we call Pause Your Life, as in pressing the pause button on your life and just relaxing and taking a breather and meditating. It's kind of like a meditation organization, and releasing all your worry and stress and all that stuff. And we facilitate meetups and retreats. And anyway, pauseyourlife.org is the website. It's cool. My wife and I have been doing it since 2013, and it's great. We facilitate retreats, which is one of the best things about it. Anyway, last year, 2017, we wanted to have a podcast produced, a little mini-series podcast, not like a weekly podcast, like 3 episodes. That's what it is. And so we hired a radio producer. Her name is Hannah Lee Myers, and she's awesome. She lives up near Boulder, and she's a radio producer and really, just really talented. And so she spent time with us. She came to one of our meetups, and she really did some research on stress and all that, and how technology affects us. And anyway, she produced these 3 episodes and did a great job. I mean, she's really, really phenomenal. We're really happy with how it turned out. The thing I want to share with you, though, is at the very last step, when she sent me the final mixes. So, and here was one of the issues from the beginning, is that, I'm an audio engineer, and I'm a mix engineer as well. And so when I hear mixes, like I hear a lot of things, right? And so I can hear little things that are not quite correct, and I can hear little changes that I would want to make. So when Hannah Lee sent me the final mixes, there was a few changes I wanted to make. And I told, she knows. I told her, like, look, I'm an actual audio engineer, so other people might not hear this, but I hear it, and I'd like it to be great. I'd like it to be awesome as possible. And so one of the things was that the final mixes were in mono. And there were many musical elements to these 3 podcast episodes, which, by the way, you can find at pauseyourlife.org/podcast. So they were in mono, but there's a lot of music in it, and of course, mostly all music is in stereo. So I asked Hannah Lee, I said, look, can we render the mixes again, but in stereo, just so the music is in stereo? And she basically told me that, look, everything's in mono. She said all the production work she's done for radio, they always do everything in mono. And she even said that when she brought the stereo music into the set, into her DAW, she converted it immediately to mono. And so everything she did was in mono. All the pieces were in mono. And so basically she told me, look, there's no way to re-render it with the music, with the music in stereo. And that was a bummer right there. So what I would suggest, if you ever do anything with music, any project, any podcast, anything, any project with audio, with music, always leave the music in stereo, at least in the DAW. Because when you render the final mix, you can render it in mono. That's fine. Render it in mono all you want. But if someone says, oh, I want it rendered in stereo, then you can just render it in stereo. So anyway, that's one of the... I mean, and to me, that's so basic that I never even thought to say that. I never even thought at the beginning of the project to tell her, like, look, we want all the music in stereo. Like, I just took that for granted. But radio is different than music, right? My audio engineering is from the music business. She comes from radio, and they're really, really different. So, but I thought it would be good to share with you the fact that whenever you do anything with music, it's usually going to be in stereo to begin with, so just leave it in stereo. And if you need to mix it to mono, fine, mix it to mono, but don't ever take a music file that's stereo and convert it to mono and then use that. Don't ever do that. That's because then you can't go back and change it, right? The other thing was, there was one of the voices in one of the episodes that was very harsh. It was someone who, to me, it sounded like someone who was talking through like earbuds with the earbud microphone, and it was just very harsh. Like, it was a lot of high frequencies. There was not much low end, but it was very harsh. Like, harsh to where, like, you sort of squint and you're like, oh man. And I just wish I could grab an EQ and just take out a lot of the high end and add a de-esser. So I asked her, do you have the sessions in your DAW? Do you have each speaker on their own track, each person on their own track? And she said, well, no, there's some tracks where she combined, 2 or 3 or 4 different clips of different speakers. And okay, so, that's how different people produce things. But so what I'm going to suggest to you is that, and the reason she does that, by the way, is to not have, 12 or 15 different tracks in her DAW. So I would suggest to you that if you ever do a big project with like 10 voices, let's say several different types of music and several different voices, always keep every voice on its own track. You'll be able to handle 12 or 15 tracks in your DAW. If there's a big, long list of tracks and you have to scroll, you can't even see all the tracks at once because there's so many tracks. You'll get used to dealing with that. You really will. It's not that hard. You can do it. The benefit of keeping every voice on their own track is that you can process each voice separately. And if the person you're delivering the mix to says, oh, this person's voice is a little harsh, can you take out some high end? All you have to do is open up the session in the DAW, go to that person's track, and apply an EQ and take out some high end and re-render the whole project. Easy. But the way Hannah Lee did it, like there was different clips on the same track and different places, and to go back and make a change would be very difficult. So it's one thing about production is that you always want to be able to step back in your process and fix something easily. And part of that is saving your different versions along the way. So if you do a mix, save the mix. If then you master it, save the mastered version. And then if you level it to minus 16 LUFS, save that version. So if you ever need to step backwards, you have the different versions. So anyway, there's more to that whole conversation. I know in podcast engineering school we spend a fair amount of time talking about how to actually do that production and how to do production in a way where you can always go back and fix something and it's not a nightmare. I mean, I think it's just very important. So that whole experience, those 2 points are what I wanted to pass along to you. And again, Hannah Lee's great, and the episodes came out really well anyway. I will tell you what I had to do. For instance, on the one episode where the one woman's voice was very harsh, I had to get a little tricky. And so what I had to do was, first of all, I tried using dynamic EQ in that harsh range, which was about between 3 and 10K. I was trying to use a dynamic EQ, so maybe when her voice came on, the dynamic EQ would push down those harsh frequencies. But then when other people were talking, it wouldn't touch their voice. That was a little hard to do. Because remember, it's one mono file, right? So if you apply an EQ, it affects the whole file. It's not just one person's voice. So what I ended up doing, which worked really well, is using a Fab Filter plugin. And now I have 3 Fab Filter plugins, and I love all 3 of them. This one was the Fab Filter MB, which stands for multi-band, I believe. And it's like a multi-band compressor, but you can use one band or several, or it's not just the regular 4-band multi-band EQ. So I just put in one band between 3 and 10 kilohertz in that harsh range. The harshness and the DS range, right? Because the DS range is usually from about 5 to 8 kilohertz, but starting around from 3 to 5 kilohertz, that's the harsh range. So I just put from 3 to 10 kilohertz, which kind of covers the harshness and the S's, and I compressed that frequency band, and it took me a while to set the threshold properly to where it was affecting the harsh woman's voice, but not affecting the other voices too much. And it was tricky. It took me a while, and it didn't turn out perfect either. But I will say that the mastered version, that woman's voice is not that harsh. It's like slightly harsh, but it's fine. But that took a while. It took a while to take one mono file with different sounding voices on it and figure out how to tame one voice while not really affecting the others. It's not easy. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. So, all right. Well, I hope you liked hanging out with me in this session, just kind of going over all kinds of cool stuff. I wish you the best for 2018, and definitely let me know what you're up to. I mean, what are your plans? What do you want to do? Are you going to take your business to new heights and all that? So anyway, go to podcastengineeringschool.com. You could check out all the other sessions. Again, this was not a standard type of session. This was just me hanging out and chatting with you. The normal session is when I interview someone and we talk about their equipment and production workflow and all that stuff. So, and of course, when I get my iMac Pro, I'm sure I'll be making a bunch of short videos and can show it. And then I'll be making a bunch of screen captures about how I'm using, audio hijack and loop back and all that kind of cool stuff. So, all right. And yeah, and no music this session and no Barry this session, right? It was just me hanging out with you. So I hope you enjoyed it. The next 2 weeks, I do have interviews. So next week we'll be back with a normal session. All right. Take care.